Hi, this is Erin from The Witch of Saturn, and today I am here to do a VR to Kate from Moonflower Moments #MyGratitude decks. So I'm a big fan of Kate's channel. I think that she's just a very insightful reader. I believe that she's a high school English or literature teacher, and I think that that really shines through in the way that she approaches her practice. So I really liked these prompts because they're so thought-provoking, and something that I wanted to do with this tag was to not just match a deck to the prompt, but to really think about what are the decks that I'm grateful for, and to really only showcase the decks that both fit the prompt and are decks that really fit that role for me. So the first prompt is the deck that has stood by my side through my darkest moments. And for me, that was the Wild Unknown. I got this deck back in 2016 when the first mass market edition of it came out. This was before I even knew that indie decks were a thing. And this deck really changed my practice. It reinvigorated my love of tarot, because up until that point, I had really just been reading with the Cosmic Tarot, and I also had the original Rider-Waite-Smith deck, but this was like something different. This artwork really spoke to me. It just felt like a deck that more matched my personality. And it showed up for me at a very difficult time where in 2015, my husband and I had gotten married. And then 3 months after our wedding, he was diagnosed with breast cancer. So that was like a very real, like, let's put those vows right to the test. And it was a difficult time. He went through treatment, he had a lumpectomy, and so we got diagnosed in September. We got married in June. He got diagnosed in September. I think his surgery was in January, and then he went through 3 months of radiation, finished that in March. And then after that, it really felt like our life was stalled, where we had been trying to like move forward and buy a house, start a family. I was trying to get pregnant, and that wasn't happening. It took me really a long time to conceive. And during that time around me, the closest people in my life were doing those things. And it was just a really challenging period where I really had to kind of like walk in this shadow and kind of like transform myself through this difficult time to kind of get to where I needed to be. And the thing about this deck is that it really had me confront these like darker or more challenging cards. Like I would always pull these cards at this time. I was always pulling the swords, like the 5, 7, 9, 10 of swords were showing up constantly. And every time I was like, oh, like I don't want this. And it really made me sit with the meaning of the difficult cards and kind of come to a place where I wasn't scared of them anymore. But that took a really long time. Like this is one that I would get a lot and just like, look at that. It's very, who wants that? And so this deck was just a real companion to me through that time, and also kind of like really revealed to me some of the magic of tarot. So for instance, I had pulled this card one day and taken a selfie, like a picture of me holding it with, like it's still up on my Instagram somewhere. It was like not my face, it was just kind of like from my neck to my lap, and I was like holding the card, like up in front of my chest. And I posted that, and it was wild because at the time, like it was was like the day after I conceived my daughter. I had no idea I was pregnant at the time. And the high priestess can, as we know, symbolize secret things, hidden things like pregnancy, for instance. And, I never pulled this card from this deck. It was not one that showed up, which is why I took the picture, because I was like, oh my gosh, finally I got the high priestess. This is like the card. This is the card I want. And it really showed me like the magic of the tarot, looking back on that, which I don't even know if I put that together until quite some time later, maybe even years, I'm not sure. But so this deck will always have a really special place for me. The other thing that was going on during my time working with this deck was that I was getting out of what was at the time my closest friendship with the person who was actually the maid of honor in my wedding. But the friendship had really turned toxic, and my friend Kate and I had started becoming closer. She's now my best friend, and she's the one that introduced me to this tarot deck. She's an art teacher, and she was like, people are raving about this deck. The art in it is really cool. I know you're into tarot. You should check it out. So I have a special connection to this deck because of my friendship with her as well. And that friendship really taught me what friendship is supposed to look like, where there's just, we can go weeks without talking, and I don't think twice about it. I assume the best of her, and she assumes the best of me, that we're just busy. And there's no other reason for it. There's just this unconditional support where I feel like she's always cheering for me, and that I can show up exactly as I am and be fully accepted by her. Not worry about if my house is clean, what I look like, knowing that she's just never judging me. And we just have a really, really nice friendship in that way. Prompt number 2 is the deck that has told me the hardest truths, and that would be Death Doula. So you could go and watch my experience with this deck on Deck Connectors Club from a few weeks ago. This deck really showed me and shined a light on some of the things that I'm still processing and working through. And Jay from Iridescent Tarot had this really brilliant insight for me, because I had been doing a lot of Persephone work, where I've mentioned this in a couple of my videos, where I use 3 to 4 different decks to represent different phases of Persephone's journey into the underworld. And then what Jay said was like, well, it's almost like that brought you to Death Doula, to like actually do the work in this very physical way. Like, this deck definitely to me is one that I will use in conjunction with my yoga practice, because it's very much this embodied visualization that I use to then process and heal some really old shadow emotions. So it was a really like difficult week with this deck, but now that I have done some of that work and continue to work with it, it really is something that I'm grateful to have, a deck that can, take me through something like that, take me to that place, and help me through it. A deck that gave me language for my feelings, prompt number 3. It's definitely the Reclaim Oracle. So this deck is so special to me because it really helps me to identify what I'm feeling. I have a hard time with that sometimes, which I chalk up to my Capricorn moon. The moon in Capricorn is in detriment, and it's just like very easy for me to go cold. I'm also kind of realizing that I've spent a lot of time in freeze, in the freeze response, that's kind of, when I was a child and I was sexually assaulted, that I went into a freeze response. And I've kind of like stayed there. ever since. And my emotions like often feel very cold. And so having a deck that I can come to and say, what am I feeling right now? Like what, I know I'm feeling something. I know how it feels in my body. I'm experiencing it and I don't have like a name for it per se. And so this deck will really help me to identify that, or to kind of give me guidance or direction as to what it is that I need to focus on. And man, like it's so powerful to be able to have a deck that can do that. And also the artwork on this that shows, you know, like in this visual form, does such a good job at showing what that emotion feels like. Like not only will it help me to identify that I'm feeling guilt, but it will show, you know, put into visuals this feeling that I'm having a hard time describing, even though I'm connecting with it. Like, oh yes, it is this like crushing weight or burden. And so I don't think that there's another deck out there that can do this. And I think that it's, you know, really important work. Prompt number 4 is the deck that opened my eyes to what I could be. And that for me is my very first deck, the Cosmic Tarot. This deck really opened my eyes to the fact that I am a tarot reader, that tarot is a part of my life, that divination is something that I am good at, connected to, and fulfilled by. And this is what helped me to understand that. When I started working with tarot and just playing around with it, doing readings for myself and doing readings for friends, where I have friends who I gave a tarot reading to back, oh my gosh, I don't even know, what year was that? It was like 2004, 2003, somewhere in there, about the state of their relationship. And it was like, I don't know, the reading, I would probably never even say this in a reading now, but I was like, yeah, you guys like are definitely gonna get married. And they did, and they still are married. And so it was just like one of those things where, and they still talk about that reading, where it just showed me how impactful tarot can be and how it can connect us to other parts of ourselves and to give us kind of tools to help other people navigate the things that they're going through. So I'm always very eternally grateful to this deck. Prompt number 5 is the deck that dared me to live. And I'm doing like a little bit of a spin on this, I think. But that deck for me is the Void Tarot. Now this is a newer deck to my collection, but I have to tell you, I've never had an instant connection with a deck like I have with this deck. And the way in which I would say it, quote, dares me to live is by allowing me to feel safe enough to do so. That this deck just feels to me like a companion, a friend, a deck that I describe as a familiar. It is the closest feeling that I've had to that type of connection since my dog passed. Just this kind of sense of unconditional love and support that I feel from this deck. I just feel very seen by it, and I also feel very like held in a way that is just like a very safe place for me to come and read and know that this deck is going to help me and tell me the truth, but in a way that is always with my best interest in mind. Like that this deck would never, you know, it's just very caring is how it feels, which is, it's weird. I even hear myself saying this and I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? This is a deck of, you know, of cards. That like logical part of my brain thinks that, but the experience of working with it is just like very powerful for me. And I just am so grateful that I bought this deck. It was a pricier deck, and I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna regret this or not, and I have zero regrets. I just adore it. So the way in which this dares me to live is by allowing me to feel safe enough to fully be myself, to be who I am in the world in a really aligned, embodied way, because I feel so accepted by this deck that then I feel like I can live in alignment with that version of myself. And it's really interesting, like speaking of those scarier cards or cards that sometimes we think of as more negative, like when I did my deck interview with this deck, 9 of Swords is what showed up in the us position. And I think it would be really easy for me to have been like, oh no, this is a bad sign, right? Like, is this deck, working with this deck, going to give me like anxiety and fear? And nothing could be further from the truth. It says, you are plagued by nightmares, you are haunted by possibilities, and these questions have become a burden. Perhaps it is time to seek solace with someone else rather than in exile. And that to me just said, like, was this deck saying, that's me. I'm what you can turn to for that help, and you don't have to do this by yourself, and like I will give you that solace because you are not alone. So I love this deck. Prompt number 6, the deck that celebrated my biggest victories, and this for me is Playful Heart. And so the reason that this is the deck that helped me to celebrate my biggest victories is because those victories are my children, and this deck is what helps me connect to my inner child, and is the deck that most represents visually the joy and connection that I feel to my children and that I see in them when they are in this state of play. And it's something that I work very hard to cultivate that in myself because, as I had mentioned, with that incident of childhood trauma and going into a freeze response, like I really lost the innocence of childhood and that ability to connect to play and joy. And it's something that, ever since, especially as an adult, that I consciously work to cultivate and connect to, and becoming a mother and kind of reparenting myself through the experience of raising my children has been like so powerful, and their joy in play and their innocence is something that inspires me every day, and I see that reflected back to me in this deck, and so I'm like so grateful for this. And also, like, this is a deck that Jay introduced me to, and my friendship with her is something that's just like blown so many things open for me and really opened my eyes to a lot of different tarot decks that weren't even on my radar, and have really like given me more tools to work with my own emotions and to get to know myself in a different way through these decks. Prompt number 7 is the deck that taught me the importance of stillness, and for this I'm choosing the Art of Attention deck by Elena Brower and Erica Jago. These are yoga healing cards. So I got this deck 10 years ago in 2015 when it first came out. This deck I first found out about in my yoga class. I was taking a class with my very first yoga teacher. Her name's Sue Elkind. She owns Dig Yoga. If you are in the yoga world, you probably know who she is, and you probably also know who Elena Brower is. She is a international yoga teacher, and she created this deck. And one day, it was actually New Year's Day, so it must have been probably New Year's Day 2016 that, yeah, I'm not sure. It was either 2015 or 2016, not important. But Sue actually used this deck in class and passed out a card to everyone. And it hit so spot on. It was just like, this deck for me hits it every time. I just always feel connected to the message. I love the imagery of this deck. I love the keywords, and I love the phrase. So intuition, your intuition holds ancient wisdom, trusted, power. Your respect is your greatest strength. Responsibility, when you take responsibility, you ensure your evolution. So I love this deck, and it really connects these two worlds of, tarot, oracle, divination with my yoga practice, which is such an important part of who I am and how I live, and is what has really taught me to be still, to sit inside of myself and observe myself in a way that allows me to shine awareness on who I really am, on my responses, to witness that, and to embrace all of the parts of myself, the light and the shadow, and to then move forward in a way that's very healing and embodied. And this deck is just very important to me because of that. Prompt number 8, the deck that gave me more questions and answers. For this, I'm choosing Majestic Earth Tarot. So I'm choosing Majestic Earth for this prompt because of the way in which it came into my possession. So this is another deck that Jay introduced me to. She was like, you don't even want to see my favorite deck because you're probably going to fall in love with it and you're not going to be able to find it. And if you do, it's going to be like ridiculously expensive, because that's the situation with this deck. Like it's incredible. It's out of print. It's coveted, and it usually sells for like $300 to $400, which I mean, I get it. I do. I understand supply and demand and things being out of print. And it's also something that I like can't stand in the tarot world. It's just, I don't know, I wish it was different, but regardless. So I did fall in love with this deck, and it really opened my eyes to the power of curated art decks, which is now one of my very, very favorite styles. But when I first heard that it was a thing, so my Gemini mind is always like, has these two, I'm always like, there's two people in my head, and like one of them is a bitch. And that one was like, oh, curated art, like, great. So you like take someone else's art, slap it on a card, and like now you're a tarot creator, which obviously I don't feel that way anymore. That was like my initial reaction. And then experiencing this deck, and then there are some other curated art decks, Folkloric Forest to name one, that I just am like, wow, the curation of this in relationship to tarot. So much talent that goes into being able to do that. And this deck just, I was like, I'll be able to read in a different way with this deck. I really felt like this was going to elevate my style of reading cards, because of the realm and the world that I can disappear into and see into in these cards, in these landscapes. And so I did this thing where I asked my guides and my ancestors specifically to help me find this deck. I said, hey, I really would like your help with this. I think that this is going to change the way that I read. I'd really like to be able to find this deck. And P.S., please make it affordable so that I know it's you. Like, haha. And then I put out like an in search of for this deck, and someone contacted me and had it for sale, and it was less than $100. And I couldn't believe it. I didn't even believe it was real until it actually came and was physically in my hands. And I just am so grateful to the person who sold it to me and to my guides and my ancestors for their assistance, because I truly do believe that it was their assistance that helped me. And that's why I chose this deck for the prompt of gave me more questions than answers, because I mean, it was just like a very powerful, mystical, magical experience that has opened my eyes to working with my guides and ancestors in a more connected way, and to being open to receive their support. And in that way, yeah, it brings up a lot of the unknown. Prompt number 9, the deck that taught me to notice the magic in the mundane. So for me, this is kind of a play on words, but when I hear the word mundane, I think of astrology, because mundane astrology is, the astrology of the day-to-day, where we see astrology show up on the news stories and what's happening in our daily lives, how the transits are affecting us on this mundane everyday level. And there is nothing that I think that is more magical in the mundane than astrology and the influence of energies on us and how we work with them within our own natal birth charts and within our transits. This deck is Star Codes Astrology. I use this in a very specific way where I use this to track the moon through the signs, where I'm just like rotating through them to see where the moon is every day, what sign that it's in. I use this on an altar in the space where I get ready for the day. I found this deck through my astro bestie, Maggie Turner, who I'm also very grateful for. Maggie is another person who I met through studying astrology and being enrolled in the same astrology program. And we just she's my astro bestie. She's like the person that I can go to and talk to about anything astrology related. And she's just like a wonderful person. We do a weekly astrology forecast every week. And she had this deck and was like, yeah, you can use this in like readings with people. You could pull some cards to see kind of like what's what or what needs a focus. And I need to do that a little bit more in my astrology readings, but I just think that that's like such a cool way to use this deck. And this to me just celebrates the magic of astrology, the power that the planets have on us. This is something that's always just made innate sense to me. Like, I'm not a religious person at all, but I'm highly spiritual. And it makes sense to me that these planetary celestial influences matter, and astrology is so on point. It's so accurate and it's so validating, and there's just something so reassuring and comforting to me about that, in knowing that it's not just us here on Earth, that there's other influences afoot, and there's a whole solar system and universe that we just can't even begin to wrap our brains around. It's just fucking magical. Prompt number 10, the deck that encourages me to embrace levity. For me, this is the Peculiar Pathways Tarot by Lennox Reese. I bought this deck on a whim because I have Folkloric Forest, and I wanted to get Coastal Curiosities, and then Lennox had said, there are only a couple Peculiar Pathways decks left, and I had like a total FOMO panic, and I was like, I need it. And so I, spur of the moment, decided to purchase this, and I'm so glad I did, because this deck is so special and interesting. And the premise behind it is like, if you were like walking down a path, which in my head is like very yellow brick road, and you came across a curtain and you pulled back the curtain and like you saw one of these scenes, that it's like this tarot walk, right? And then you're then kind of looking behind these curtains to see like, oh, and then here's the Knight of Cups, and what do all of these things mean? And when you look at her guidebook, it gives you there's so many layers to this. Like, there's the background, which is different. I think the backgrounds are all curated art, and then there's the black and white animals and items. Like, what does this mean with the falcon on top of the snail and the bell? And in her guidebook, all of these things have symbolism. And then there's the bees and the berries, and what do each of those things mean? And for me, it's just reminds me to not take tarot like so seriously, right? Like, here's 5 of Wands with the Zippo lighter. Like, this is just like fun and lighter, but also still like very accurate and very great reader, and just the quality of this deck is so well done that I love it, but it does bring a certain lightness, fun, curiosity, kind of like very Alice in Wonderland, right? Where there's like, this is like a different realm that I can go to that is not rooted in reality in a very, very good way. Like, look at this. This is just splendid. I actually think that everything about this deck is perfect. I have no notes about it except one thing. I wish that there was a ribbon in this because sometimes the cards get stuck in the bottom. That's like literally the only thing that I would change about this deck. Prompt number 11 is the deck that shifted my practice. And for this, I had to pick the RWS Redux by Jamie Sawyer. So Jamie is another person that I'm just so grateful to have in my life. We've been friends for 19 years, long before tarot was even really a thing for either of us. And it's like wonderful that now that friendship has grown to also include this, you know, bond over tarot. Like, what an extra added benefit to an already great friendship. And when I started reading with this deck, like, it shifted my whole tarot practice. One, because there's no words on this deck, and that's something that I didn't know that I liked and needed until I started working with this. Two, it has the astrological associations in the back, which is something that I really wanted in my deck. I like in this one that it's in a way that it's there if you want it, but also isn't part of the imagery. And three, also, like, there's something about this kind of like watery, like a watercolor backgrounds and the mandalas that makes this deck like very meditative for me, that helps me to use the classic RWS imagery, but tap more into my intuition and to see the story that the cards are telling me. And this is the deck that I used and still use as a professional tarot reader. I just think that this does it for me when I'm reading for other people. And it's just been like, it's just so important to me, this deck, that I can use it to read in this very specific way, to do, you know, to answer more predictive questions, but to also explore things on a deeper level as well. And lastly, the deck that jump-started a creative project, which for me is the Moonchild Tarot Shadow Edition. So this is how I met Jay from Iridescent Tarot. I was searching for this deck. I put out an ISO for it. I had always really loved this creator and been a big fan of Starchild Tarot, but the regular Moonchild didn't really speak to me. And then when I saw the Shadow Edition, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful and deep. And I just really wanted this edition, and it was at the time out of print and I couldn't find it anywhere. And I didn't know that it had been, that the creator had re-released it. I'd heard that was going to happen, but I didn't really have my finger on the pulse of when that was occurring. And Jay messaged me kind of saying like, hey, did anybody, you know, hit you up about this deck? Do you have any leftovers? Because I want to buy it too. And that was it. It was the beginning of this friendship that has also turned into creative work together, where now we both started our YouTube channels and we do Deck Connectors Club together. And yeah, it's just been a very inspiring and important friendship for me that I didn't think I was gonna have again at this point in my life. Like, I'm 43 now, I'm a mom, I'm kind of like locked into my daily life. The new people that I meet are generally like through my kids, like other mom friends, let's say. And I have my handful of really close friends that are so important to me. And I just kind of didn't think that I was gonna, meet someone randomly who's going to like quickly elevate to that same level. And our friendship definitely has. And I'm just so grateful for it, because it's just like, I wish for everyone to have a friend where you connect over a shared passion and just have that instant connection. It's special, and I don't take it for granted. So this deck will always, represent that, the way that we found each other. And also, what's come from that, which is really lit this spark of creativity and excitement and inspiration for me to continue to create and put myself out there in the world and share my passion and love of tarot and astrology with other like-minded people in this community that I find to be so gratifying and supportive and welcoming, and just really feels like home. So thank you all for, creating that for all of us. Okay, well, thank you all so much for watching. That was my gratitude decks. Thank you again to Moonflower Moments, to Kate for creating this tag. I thought it was just like very insightful, inspiring, and really made me think. So I'm so grateful for that. And for all of you, thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment below. I love to hear from you. Have a very, very happy Thanksgiving if that's something that you celebrate. And I'm so grateful for you and to be here. Bye.